We're going to start by presenting some awards. This morning we had our medical valuation competition. Some fantastic entries. These are startups and pre-startup companies kind of presenting their pitches and trying to convince a panel of very smart and sharp judges that they're the best. So Mike Finch who's running the competition, is with the medical Valuation Laboratory, is going to, here at the university, is going to come and present the awards.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We had 6 groups come in today, and all with really interesting ideas. So each year we do this. It's the Medical Innovation Valuation Competition. I'm at the Carlson School, so you imagine that we love the innovation technically. We also love the innovation as a business piece, and we look at both. So we're looking to see which of these has got promise to it, which one has a good business plan behind it. We assume, or actually we look at, but the first thing we want to know is it going to work? Is it something that's going to meet a need out there? But then, is it something that can actually move forward and go into the market? So we had 6. We listened to them today. They made their presentations, and we have 3 finalists. And we'll start off with, how do we want to do this? Gary? Here we go. 3rd place, Nitinol Thin Film Heart and Valve Leaflets is our 3rd place, please. I think they got it backwards.
Come around the side. There's no stairs over there.
Thank you. Our 2nd place winner for today is Trinity Tube and Palm Reader. You folks want to come on up? And our grand prize winner is Solora Injectable Long-Term Implants. You made that leap. Nice one. And that's it for this year. Thank you, and I want to thank all the contestants who came here. Let's give them a round of applause.
Okay, thank you, Mike, and congratulations to all of the winners. Okay, so now it's time for the main event, and it gives me great pleasure to introduce the 2024 DMD Conference Award winner and keynote speaker, Pat Dillon. This award is given to those in the community who have been exceptionally supportive of this conference and who also have contributed to the regional medical technology ecosystem. And for many of us in this room, we can't think of anyone more deserving of this award than Pat Dillon. So let me just tell you a little bit about her. Pat is the founder and president of MNSBIR, Inc., which is a nonprofit organization that supports startups and small businesses in their commercialization efforts. She's a leader in Minnesota's innovation and commercialization ecosystem with over 30 years of experience connecting companies to America's Seed Fund, which is the government SBIR and STTR funding program, where she's helped hundreds of businesses secure hundreds of millions of dollars, federal research dollars, to support innovation and commercialization of exciting new products. On her LinkedIn page, Pat describes herself as, quote, a peacock working with startups and small businesses to create the most vibrant, incredible feathers in the ecosystems. And I just love that description. Pat's a member of the University of Minnesota Technology Commercialization Business Advisory Group, chairs the Technological Leadership Institute Advisory Board at the University of Minnesota, is a mentor for the Carlson School of Business Startup course, a contributor to the MNCOR program, and a frequent speaker at Twin Cities Startup Week. But basically, she's everywhere. I don't know why I'm reading that list. It's just, if it's an event, Pat is there. She's a recipient of the prestigious Small Business Administration Tibbetts Award and a recipient of the 25 Most Innovative Women Award from what's now called the Minneapolis-St. Paul Business Journal. Some of you may not know it, but Pat is also a retired United States Navy commander with 40 years of active and reserve service and a combat veteran, having served in Afghanistan in support of Operation Enduring Freedom. And through the GI Bill, received an MBA and a BS in Business Administration from Monona State University. There's no question that Pat Dillon is an absolute gem of a resource to the Minnesota startup community, and I guarantee you that there's no one in the community who doesn't know her. In fact, I don't know, you better call Pat Dillon is likely the most repeated phrase among those advising young startups in this state. And as for contributing to this conference, Pat's one of our longest standing session organizers on the topics of medtech business startups and is always bringing us fresh perspectives on this topic. But this year, I think she's set a record for conference participation. So along with delivering the keynote that you're about to hear, earlier this morning, she spoke at the Mincubator Startup Session. Later today is an industry panelist in the Pediatrics Devices Workshop, and tomorrow is the organizer and moderator of the SBIR STTR session. So I don't know how you do it, Pat, but thank you very much. It's remarkable. But now it's time to hear from our keynote speaker. You're in for a real treat because she's going to take us on a history tour of innovation in the United States that she's titled Catalysts of Innovation, Government Legislation, Funding, Patents, and Entrepreneurship. So please join me in welcoming to the podium DMD Conference Award recipient Pat Dillon.
Now, this is here, so if I start to cry, I got something to capture the tears. So, wow, thank you, Will. Thank you, Art, Paul, the whole entire Bakken Medical Devices Center. You know, you've been a real treat to work with over the years. So I've been at this for a long time. So I believe in the American dream. How many of you believe in the American dream? So I grew up on a farm in western Wisconsin, and I always thought, you know, what if we could do things differently? Always. I mean, ever since I was a little girl. And that has really brought me through my entire career. Like, what if? What if we can make this happen? And so when I got started in the SBIR program, America's Seed Fund, it was 1994. And let me tell you, entrepreneurship was not sexy. It was like the redheaded stepchild. Nobody wanted to work with the entrepreneurs. But I saw something different because I always had this big vision. I always had this belief that if you support someone at an early stage and you give them the confidence that they can move forward, that they could do great things. And you're going to actually hear about some of the entrepreneurs that I've worked with in the last several years. In fact, 30 years I've been working with this serial entrepreneur. So all people always ask me, well, Pat, how did you get involved in this? The truth is, somebody yelled out their window while they were driving down the road, and they said, I have a job for you. And that led to me joining this nonprofit here in Minneapolis called Minnesota Project Innovation, which existed for 20 years. And I worked there for 13 years. And I knew the value and the impact of having a very independent, novel, adaptive, flexible organization to move in concert with what was happening at the federal level. And that with state funding, which state funding is really important because entrepreneurs, they don't have a lot of money. So it was really important for the state to make this investment in that nonprofit. But unfortunately, 1990 or 2003, we didn't get state funding, which of course led to a bunch of changes. But I always believed we got to get back to this nonprofit because it's a really important role in the ecosystem to be a resource for companies navigating this crazy world of federal R&D and of course technology commercialization. So as I was thinking about my talk today, and I was in Hawaii recently, and a couple Mai Tais actually helped out. But what you're going to hear today is something that I've been thinking about and contemplating for many, many years. And why I chose the title, Catalysts of Innovation, is because there are things that happen and that we take for granted. And we shouldn't take them for granted. But they really are the catalysts for all of you entrepreneurs that are out in the audience today. And if I could get a show of hands, how many entrepreneurs are in the audience today? Come on, raise your hands with pride. Come on. You are the future of this country. That's the other thing I say. And I've never met an entrepreneur with just one idea. So you want to step into this arena, step in with both feet into that opportunity that exists in front of you. So my talk is on legislation, and so I'm going to walk you through kind of from 1945, and then I'm going to skip a couple decades, and then I'm going to start at 1980, and then we'll go forward from there. So you have my introductory remarks. I'm passionate about innovation. I'm passionate about entrepreneurship. I'm passionate about making a difference in the world and being a part of something bigger than yourself. And of course, the military probably drilled that into me. But, it's really about America. And that's what keeps me going all the time. So let's start with where it really all started, back when we were founded as a country, and the Constitution that give people like yourselves the opportunity to patent your ideas and to benefit from that. This is huge. So I think, we need to recognize that that's a big part of our innovation ecosystem in this country. And then I'm going to play a little clip. So how many of you have heard of Vannevar Bush? All right, do we have any public policy people in this room? So I'm going to play this clip. So when I think about post-World War II, and this is when Harry S. Truman charged him with coming up with kind of a strategy for the United States, because they saw the real value of all the technology development efforts that came out of World War II. And that as a nation, we needed to continue to do that and to support basic research and to support this new enterprise that exists in this country. So with that, I'm just going to play this video clip. It's only about 4 or 5 minutes long, and hopefully it works. But I think it really captures
Well, the brilliance of Vannevar Bush was that he had this concept that the federal government would give opportunities to university scientists to compete for research awards and research grants in various areas, and the best ideas would win out in that system. It was a brilliant concept, and it has served this country well for 75 years.
Bush very much talked in this report about the freedom of inquiry, about giving scientists the opportunity to think unfettered thoughts.
So many of the things we take for granted today were not at all obvious or even likely to have come about.
One thing that came out of Science, the Endless Frontier, is also funding very fundamental research.
It's only through allowing people to be creative and to think about the what ifs that we stumble on to solutions that lead to different inventions.
The vision that Vannevar Bush had of the government supporting science and doing it at the nation's universities has produced an innovation engine that has been unparalleled.
What will that look like in the next 75 years? Research is changing. I think we're moving from a very much of an individual investigator to more collaborations, not only within the U.S., but international collaborations.
So I think it's important not only that we invest in research, but we also lead with our American values, which is the value of openness and discovery and creativity, and we can really be a world leader.
The challenges that we face, that scientists have to help address, they are not disciplinary challenges. If we think about climate change or adaptation or mitigation, that's not a disciplinary domain. So interdisciplinary is just the way to go. It's unavoidable.
But one of the things that I really wish we could include more in our communication about science is the way science is done, the importance of evidence, the importance of peer review.
If we want Americans to be willing to fight for science, our citizens have to believe they are a part of the scientific enterprise and that they benefit from that enterprise.
But the next step is, I think, to ensure that science and technology produce broad social benefit. And for that, you really need people who think about society in nuanced ways, right? So you need social scientists, you need humanists.
We need a national strategy to invest in basic scientific research because the fruit of that research can transform the way we live our lives. The American Competes Act, which was legislation adopted by the Congress to make sure that we remained at the cutting edge in terms of technologies, was born out of an important study done at the National Academy of Sciences.
If we set specific goals, and in that case it was what do we need to do to keep America competitive in an increasingly competitive world, we could probably reach them.
We should trust our past experiences and invest in the best minds to think in different ways. And so the question is, how can we stimulate society? How can we stimulate young people to take an orthogonal point of view and somehow make the breakthroughs that we truly need?
You know, I have this strong belief that whenever America decides that something is a priority, we focus on it. And whenever we focus on a problem or a challenge, we find ways to address that challenge or to solve that problem.
The previous 75 years, we were navigating this river, and now the river ends in the open ocean. So we should not be cautious. Now try to kind of stay close to the coast. But I think now is the moment for people to be motivated and go on these kind of travels, on these explorations in that new world. And I think the impact on society will be great.
I love that video. So one of these days I'm going to actually read the Science, the Endless Frontier. But I like to be a big thinker. Like he had those thoughts and that vision in 1945, and I'm sure he had lots of people sitting around the table helping him out. But it's having that vision, and that's what's really important, is having that vision and then, of course, executing on that vision. So I really like this quote, too, from the former NSF director. It's the basic research is the pacemaker of technological progress. So when I think about the work that we do, and we work a lot with the University of Minnesota startups and Mayo Clinic startups, You know, it all started at basic research. And then there's a discovery made. It's disclosed to the Technology Commercialization Office. The decision is made to patent something. And then maybe the next step is to have a startup. And that's where we work with the U to help turn that basic research, those discoveries, into startups and to secure SBIR and STTR funding to continue down that path towards commercialization. So how many of you heard of this congressional act? See, I knew I was going to stump all of you. So again, we flash forward through a couple decades, and now we're at 1980. And these two gentlemen in Congress felt like there was a need for technology transfer to occur out of the federal labs and into companies. And this is really groundbreaking as well, because, you know, really those things hadn't really happened prior to that. And as taxpayers, all these investments are going into basic and applied research, and we as a nation, we need to transfer that and get it into our economy as a new product or service that generates revenues and jobs and other investments, et cetera. So again, when I look at the federal R&D enterprise in this country, it is really, truly the envy of the world, because we have all these inputs at all these different organizations: government, academic, medical, nonprofits, and now small businesses. All these organizations contributing to innovation. And it's across the board, across science and technology. It's so diverse. It's really quite amazing. Now, I know somebody in the audience here knows about the Bayh-Dole Act. Who wants to raise their hand? Come on. This is incredible legislation that was passed in 1980, and this allows universities and small businesses to profit from the commercialization of their technology. And you can see what impact this has had. And this study, I think, was done in 2020. So when we fund basic research at an academic institution and it turns into a discovery, turns into a patent application, a startup, amazing things happen. Well, the same thing with SBIR and STTR funded companies. We have to give companies the flexibility to benefit from that commercialization. And how do they benefit from it? Well, we have a bunch of millionaires around the world, or around the country, that have come through the SBIR and STTR programs and the support of the Bayh-Dole Act. Huge, huge opportunity. And so those two gentlemen there, Senator Bayh-Dole and Senator Bayh and then Senator Dole, which both gentlemen have passed on. So now here's my passion in life. And I always say these 8 letters changed the world, and they are continuing to change the world. Those $4 billion every year in these two programs to support applied research with the goal to commercialize. America's Seed Fund, your tax dollars being used to support R&D and small businesses all across this nation. So when I was doing my research, I was reminded, that, when Vannevar Bush, came up with the science endless frontier, a big part of that included the establishment of the National Science Foundation in 1950. And of course, we all know NSF is this amazing organization. But there was a gentleman there by the name of Roland Tibbetts who believed that small, innovative businesses ought to be competing for federal funding as well, and to do it only with other small businesses or among other small businesses. Prior to SBIR, a small business had to compete with academic institutions, nonprofits, et cetera, that sometimes more resources are available to support them. So Roland Tibbetts is considered the father of the SBIR program. How much funding has been allocated to these two programs since 1982, when the program was first established? Anybody want to take a guess? $65 billion. All right, who's heard of Qualcomm? So Qualcomm is the granddaddy of SBIR, an SBIR awardee. Back in the 90s, when no investor wanted to put money into that company, lo and behold, here's the SBIR program that supported that really critical, innovative research that needed to be done. And the rest is history. Huge company, huge impact. I forgot to check what their latest market cap is, but I think it was like 12 billion or something. So Roland Tibbetts has impacted so many people all across this country. President Reagan, he was the first president to sign it into law. And then, of course, Senator Kennedy, and a couple by the name of Obermeyer, and they've all passed on. But what a legacy to leave behind. That you had this vision, you brought it to life, and it has impacted companies and people for 40 years, and even my life. So what are these two programs? Why are they important? And I know we've got some SBIR award winners in the audience. You want to raise your hand? Don't be shy. Here we go. Yay! If you can't tell, I love SBIR. It's not the mechanics of the program, it's what it represents. It's a young guy right there, taking a drink of water. You got an idea? You got a concept? You want to be an entrepreneur? This is your pathway. And it's all non-dilutive. You don't have to pay it back. But you pay it back by adding jobs, raising capital, new IP, all those sorts of things. So I always tell the young people, I used to be the young one, but not anymore, you are the future of this country. And there is no better time to be an entrepreneur than now, because there are so many resources available. So many resources. I mean, we got Matt here with the neurotech course here at the university, and all kinds of people all across the nation that are contributing to and participating in that session. We have Millie, we have MNCOR, the I-Corps program, which is fantastic, Launch Minnesota. Those are just some of the things on the state level, but on the federal level, there's a bunch of other things that are available. So there's no better time to be an entrepreneur. And as I was talking with a prior client this morning who I hadn't seen in a long time, he's like, Pat, you told me something like 10 years ago. He's like, you told me to be fearless. I said, I did? Okay. So I said, no, to my advice to the young people here, if you think you've got an entrepreneurial bug in you anywhere, then you be fearless. You go for it. You have nothing to lose. You have everything to gain. But be smart about it. You know, everything it starts with the idea, the concept of the project, but you got to turn it into a business. It's not a science project. So with SBIR, you know, you can keep everything internally in your company, but you know what? You're not going to be successful. You have to engage with other entities, other people, other brain power to bring your idea to life. But what I love about the STTR program is that we're leveraging the facilities, the equipment, and the expertise here at the university, Mayo Clinic, or maybe some other university to support what you're doing. Most of the U of M startups that continue down the path of SBIR and STTR go after STTRs because it's that collaborative research relationship that exists. And as a nation, as a taxpayer, I say, let's leverage it all. Let's leverage every opportunity, every resource that's available so that my company can be successful. And don't be shy. So I'm not going to run through this, but you can read all about this on the SBIR.gov website, which is like the mother of all websites for SBIR, but you know, it's a government program, and when you start getting involved in the 11 agencies that participate in the program, you get overwhelmed pretty fast. And even I get overwhelmed these days because there's so much going on at the federal level with these two programs. It is so much more challenging than what it used to be. Or maybe it's because I've gotten older. Can't tell which one. But the American Competes Act, we had one of the gentlemen, you know, on the video talk about the Competes Act. You know, to me, it was something that they passed, but it really, in my mind, didn't really get a lot of attention. But, you know, nonetheless, you know, it was something that Congress, you know, authorized and appropriated funding for this to help support our U.S. innovation system. But the big daddy now is the CHIPS Science Act. And again, billions of dollars allocated to keep America on the forefront of science and technology and to support our U.S. competitiveness in a global market and global environment. And we know that there are, you know, other countries that aren't supportive of our system. And so we need to do what we need, you know, can do to ensure that we continue to have that number one spot in the world when it comes to innovation and impact. Again, I encourage you to just read through it. You know, you can sign up for a newsletter every week. You get an announcement, Chips for America. It's huge impact. And I can't wait to see what these investments will make in the future. And I always say that it takes about 20 years for a government program to really start hitting its stride. I just can't, you know, hopefully I'll be around for that, but I just really am excited about this CHIPS and Science Act for our country. How many of you heard of Smart MedTech 3.0? So we just had a session this morning. Kurt Smith, where are you? There's Kurt. He did a great job, and we had a whole panel of individuals that represent other organizations that have all come together to support this Smart MedTech 3.0. And I am very hopeful that the U.S. Department of Commerce, the Economic Development Administration, selects Minnesota's proposal and funds it, because we will change the world in more ways than others can imagine. So I'm excited about that. So why is SBIR and SCTR important to this initiative? Because as entrepreneurs with limited resources, financial resources, SBIR and STTR is that significant source of capital to support that R&D that's going to help bring that idea, that opportunity to commercialization. It won't be the only source of funding, but it will be a critical source of funding. So one thing that I've noted in the last several weeks is that the National Institutes of Health, which of course is the largest funder of biomedical and behavioral research in this country, tracks all the funding that they allocate towards different chronic diseases and so forth, or technologies. And they didn't start tracking artificial intelligence or machine learning until about 2018 or 2019. And you can just see the trend line is going this way. So that's what I get excited about, that, you know, as a nation, we're making investments in these novel technologies that are obviously going to impact our way of life and certainly our health going forward. So then what's the so what here in Minnesota? And I got really excited about this because just this last weekend when I did the last search on SBIR.gov, Minnesota companies have secured $1 billion in funding. And this has led to companies that have gone from the seed stage to an IPO, a seed stage to a merger and acquisition, a seed stage to a small business in our local communities. Or we have small businesses that need to innovate to stay competitive. And so they too get into the world of federal R&D to help bring that new product or service to the marketplace for the future. And then of course we have the graveyard. You know, those companies that didn't make it. And Frank from Medical Alley talked about the number of firms that don't make it. Well, let's try to reverse that trend. Let's make sure that they do make it, and they're being smart about it. This is huge. So where do we rank? Well, we rank about 12th in the nation when it comes to NIH funding. I think we can do better. Now, here's a very dear colleague of mine, someone that I've known for 30 years, Brian Brockway. He's a graduate here of the University of Minnesota. He's the founder and CEO of a company called VivaQuant. And this little device here is pretty amazing. And it was funded in part by an NIH SBIR grant. And so this is something that a person wears on their chest, and it collects their ECG information, and then it gets transmitted. And then they have people on staff that are tracking and monitoring the patients remotely. Great opportunity, and it started with an idea, a concept. And the first time it was submitted to NIH, it wasn't selected for funding. But subsequently it was, and then the rest is history. So Brian is a serial entrepreneur and very successful, and he's actually our chairman of the board for our nonprofit as well. Then we have Amy Garza, founder and CEO of Corvi Medical. So Amy had been at Medtronic for 20 years. And she left, but she had this idea, this concept of this continuous blood pressure monitoring device that's subcutaneous, implantable. And so she got connected to us probably about 4 years ago, and it's been one beautiful journey, ups and downs all along the way. She received funding through the National Science Foundation to help develop the technology further, and she just submitted her $1 million phase 2 to NSF, and I'm really optimistic and very excited that that will come through. And she also raised money through investors to help support the company. But it's a long journey. I remember Amy, and she probably, hopefully she's not here, but she said, we'll get this done in like 2 years. Oh, yeah, okay, Amy, I don't believe you, but yeah, okay. Well, it's 4 years later, but you gotta have grit. You have got to be in it for the long haul. None of this happens overnight, and you have got to be passionate and tenacious, and you have to stick with it, and you don't give up. So in the Navy, we say, never give up the ship. Well, it's true here. You never give up your company. You keep going. There's always another pathway. Rob is here at the university, but he also has a startup company called Adapt Design Works. And Rob is a quadriplegic, and NIH is very much interested in funding entrepreneurs that have a disability. And so he's, and he also was with another company called Abilitech, but so now he has his own company. And this project is with the U of M, and it's based on some technology that was developed at Mayo Clinic, and it involves the VA. And it's this pressure mapping system for Alzheimer's patients. Imagine you're an Alzheimer's patient, you're sitting in a wheelchair. You cannot communicate if you feel like a pressure sore is coming, is manifesting itself. And so this system, this very high-tech seat system, is going to be able to monitor that and then be able to communicate it through a mobile device. And then here's the rising star. And I know there's a few people in here that know Efrain Torres, recent graduate from the University of Minnesota. He has a startup company called Adelante, and they are making this portable MRI. And I love his story. He is not your typical PhD individual. He came from the south side of Chicago, full of grit, full of opportunity, went to Marquette, got his biomedical engineering degree, came up to Minnesota to get his PhD in Dr. Garwood's lab and so forth, and the rest is history. He is the youngest principal investigator in Minnesota in the SBIR program. And he's just amazing. So if you ever get a chance to hear Dr. Torres, feel free to reach out and talk with him. He's so impressive. And his company is funded through the National Science Foundation. So NSF is a very cool agency, in my mind. If I had another 10 years in my career, I'd want to go work at the NSF. I just think they're really doing cool things and impactful things that are going to add to our economy and our U.S. competitiveness. So what are my final comments here? So we're ranked 12th in the nation for NIH awards, SBIR awards, STTR awards. I think we can do better. We've secured over $500 million in funding that's led to IPOs, mergers, and acquisitions, and small businesses. And of course, the graveyard, because not everybody makes it. We're 22nd overall for all SBIR awards, which I think, again, we can do better. We need more firms just stepping into the arena. The support is here to help you, and it doesn't cost you anything. The state has funded us to help you. And so we have our process, but we're here to help. We're not looking for a check or anything from you. We're here to do good in the world. And this is the part that really surprises me. But when I think about, well, how many Minnesota companies, med tech companies, actually get funding every year? And so this is based on the NIH Reporter database. And generally, it's about 25 or less companies a year that get SBIR funding in this state. I just think we can do better. And I don't know what the silver bullet is. I mean, you've heard, everybody knows me. So why should it be a secret? I don't know. Maybe people don't want to write proposals. Or maybe it's a scary federal government, People do it every day. If there's something that we don't know, we go ask the people that know. So when I think about NIH having $1.3 billion a year and anything to do with the human body, and you saw the diversity of those projects that did get funded by SBIR, you just say, well, what if? I've got an idea, I got this concept, and it has business or commercial potential. We always have to answer that question. So that's why Smart MedTech 3.0 is really exciting, because we're going to do our due diligence, but hopefully one of those will be really just knock it out of the park. And this is the one thing that really surprises me, because NIH, they are really doing things differently, and they're more in tune with what's going on in the entrepreneurial space, startups and small businesses. But for one project, it is possible to get $5 million of non-dilutive funding over 3 phases. And then we have ARPA-H. How many of you have heard of ARPA-H? stand by. That's going to rock the world as well. And we have a client here. I don't know if she wants to be recognized, but a great opportunity, and I'm very optimistic that this person will be successful in getting their $3.5 million award. So again, this is real. This is not make-believe. I have often said I watch the American dream in action every day, and I do. Especially, it's just people they have ideas, they have opportunities, and they want to bring it to fruition. Now, NIH, anything to do with the human body, so that's, if you have to do animal studies, you have clinical trials, drugs, devices, therapeutics, diagnostics, digital healthcare. I mean, there's a document, it's 240 pages long. If you really have trouble falling asleep at night, maybe you want to read this. But it's anything to do with the human body. And all you have to do is plug your idea, your concept into one of their broad areas, and you'll be just fine. But then you do have to write the proposal. So I think, starting this journey, you have to decide to apply. You have to decide that this is what I'm going to do. And I know I'm not going to win on the first time, but I am going to stick with it. Because when I do, and I'm going to learn from what those reviewers say about my proposal, about my project, my study design, etc., but I'm going to learn from it, and I'm going to do better the next time. Because if you learn how to do it, you can feed yourself for the rest of your life. And I remember telling a PhD student here at the U, this is several years ago, I said, you learn from those professors who have been funded by these agencies. You learn from them how to write a scientific proposal, a high-quality proposal. Because if you learn that, you're going to be able to do great things with your company. And I think he ended up winning $4 or $5 million in funding through the Department of Energy and so forth. So it's really important that, if you're here at the university and you're in someone's lab and you've got this, working on your PhD, learn how to do this. Because what's happening as well in this ecosystem of federal funding and entrepreneurship and so forth is that there's a recognition that as a PhD student and graduate, that you have another pathway open to you now. It's called entrepreneurship. And that didn't exist for a long time. So I'm telling you a little story, and I wish I would have wrote a white paper on this one, because it's really a visionary, even if I have to say so myself. So, it's not scientific at all, but I was watching and watching these trends that were happening in the SBIR program, and it's like 1998. And I wrote this white paper, and I called it the Entrepreneurial Scientist Program. And it was really aimed at taking a PhD candidate that might have aspirations to being an entrepreneur, but then helping them, give them the business expertise, the marketing, the financing, all those sorts of things that you have to know if you're going to start and grow a company. And it was, of course, in collaboration with the university and all the names of those organizations, like the Tech Transfer Office. Well, of course, now it's called the Tech Commercialization Office. The Venture Center didn't exist. Then there were a couple of other things. But it was like we had to come up with this new pathway for these PhD candidates or graduates because the tenured positions were falling. There wasn't that pathway. And so I wish I would have wrote a white paper on it. Well, I do. I still have it, but it's dated, of course. But what's happened at the federal level is that the agencies have now recognized that we need to support PhD candidates and graduates that are still at our academic institutions to help them bridge the gap towards entrepreneurship. Again, this this is groundbreaking. This has never been done before in all the years that I've been involved with these two programs. So there's a real appetite to help give those talented individuals that are at our academic institutions another pathway, and the resources are there to support that. So in closing, what I'd like to say is that innovation and entrepreneurship are the lifeblood of our economy in Minnesota and our nation. The world of research, technology transfer, and commercialization are central to our economy and our U.S. competitiveness. And we are at a pivotal time in our nation's history to stand bold and drive innovation for economic and societal impacts. So you've heard me talk about these elements of congressional legislation, federal funding, intellectual property, and entrepreneurship, and I really truly believe these are the key ingredients to create the conditions for our thriving innovation economy that drives U.S. competitiveness in our way of life. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, I think we've got some time for questions. So we have some people with the mics, and now is your chance to ask questions of Pat.
Hi, my name is Chester Coe from Houston. So I want to say thank you very much for a great presentation. We have a small paper on the SBIR STTR program for pediatric devices, and one thing we learned was that the STTR program has only 1/10 the budget of SBIR. Is that something that should be changed, in your opinion?
High tech. You know, so SBIR and STTR are going to go through reauthorization next year. And let's hope Congress makes it a permanent program, first of all. I think 40 plus years of evidence clearly shows there's merit in making sure that these programs stay in existence for a long time. My preference would be that SBIR and STTR be combined into one program and let it up to the company to decide if they're going to have a collaborative research relationship and make all the funding all in one pool than what it is now. Because right now, the agencies, so a little history here. So SBIR was created in 1982. STTR didn't come along until 1992. And so why did Congress come up with the STTR program? Because they know that all these inputs, all this basic research funding going into our academic institutions, technologies are developed, patents are filed, and then it sits on the shelf. Well, that's not really doing anybody any good. And the taxpayer wants a return on their investment. So they said, okay, so now we're going to create this program, but only 5 agencies are required to participate, and those 5 are the ones that receive in excess of $1 billion a year in extramural R&D funding. So they had to take a little slice of the pie, and I think right now it's 0.45%, and they have to set it aside for STTR. So as a company, you say, well, I've got a project. Which pathway should I go? SBIR? Well, I know there's more money over there, but we have STTR as an option. So to me, it's always a strategic decision, which pathway to go and what are the needs of the project. And then when we only have 5 agencies, or actually there's 6 now that participate in STTR, that's also another question that we have to answer. So I think, if it were up to me, I'd put all the money in one bucket, and the company choose whether it's an SBIR or an STTR. And we get around this trying to, figure out what our success is going to be if we go this route or that route. Does that help?
Just to add, pediatric devices, we have to stay in academics a little bit longer, so I think the STTR program is a lot more attractive.
So say that again?
Pediatric devices has to stay within academics a little bit longer, so that's why I think the STTR program would be much more helpful for us if the funding was increased, so thank you.
So I had, when I was living and working in Wisconsin, we had a great project. And it went in as an STTR, and it was like a $3.3 million NIH grant. And it involved UW-Madison, involved a medical doctor from the Medical College of Wisconsin, and 3 industrial partners, a couple clinical sites. And then it was with a company in northern Wisconsin, north of Highway 8. It was a great project. Well, when it got time, they wanted to fund it, but they ran out of STTR money. So now we had to switch gears to SBIR, which we were successful in doing that. But these are things that I just want to get away from that because it just creates a complexity that I don't think needs to be there. Okay, next question.
Hi, thanks for your talk. I'm Terry. I work for Medtronic. But when I was right out of grad school, worked for a startup company, had the opportunity to kind of flex that muscle and do some SBIR grants and STTR grants. And I noticed, we've got a lot of great multinational biomedical companies here in Minnesota. And how do we, when you asked, who's an entrepreneur? And I think everyone at Medtronic or Boston, well, I work for a big company. Maybe I'm not an entrepreneur. What is your advice for, I would offer that everyone can be an entrepreneur. We've got lots of great ideas within big companies that might also be startups like Amy's example. What's your advice to young engineers and scientists who might want to scratch that entrepreneurial itch? It seems like SBIR, STTR are not open to companies the size of Medtronic in Boston. What's your advice?
Well, don't quit your day job until you have that notice of award. Amy is one of actually a few of our clients that have come out of one of the big companies and that have stepped into this world of entrepreneurship and innovation and have gotten SBIR awards. Of course it's not an easy pathway. There's lots of ups and downs, and frankly, I had just had this conversation last week with a PhD candidate here at the U who had a career, and then he decided to come to the U to get his PhD, and he's trying to figure out what the next plan is. So he's thinking out a year from now, and he could go work for a big company, he could do a startup, and all these things. And so of course we talk about SBIR and what that means and how you need to be strategic in everything that you do. Be smart about it. And then I asked him, I said, do you have a spouse or a partner or what, because every entrepreneur, there's somebody standing behind him or her that's saying, yay, go, or they're going, when are you going to get a job? And so I asked this question. And if you have aversion to risk, then I'd probably say don't quit your day job. But be fearless. So a little side story. So I'm at the age where I could retire, but I chose not to. And so there was a point, after what happened in 2003, I just felt like it was just such a travesty of what happened here in Minnesota, because when our little nonprofit didn't get funded, it was really a very sad day. And I tried to keep it going for a year, but then politics, always get in the way. But I always had the dream. I always had the dream to bring it back because I knew the value of it. So back in 2021, prior to COVID, I thought, you know what, it's time. It's either now or never. So I did, and here we are. I leaned in. I leaned into that. And I don't know what I was so scared of. It's been a lot of work, but you know what? I don't know what I was scared of. So if you have an entrepreneurial bug, you know, if you're at a big company or whatever, you know, just be smart about it. Just put your plan together, you know, and talk to other people. But, you know, at the end of the day, it's like you got to ask yourself, where do I want to be 5 years from now or 10 years from now? What do I want to be doing? So I always ask, you know, people, well, which E do you want to be? Employee or entrepreneur? So.
Well, I think that is a great point to close on. Before Pat leaves the stage, we've got our DMD Conference Award for Pat, which really should say Chief Cheerleader Award, don't you think? So please join me in thanking Pat.